Most people with hearing loss don't know they have it yet, but the person next to them, they've known it for years. Someone walks into my clinic, usually with their spouse sitting next to them, and the first thing out of their mouths is, "I don't think I've got a problem. She made me come." And the spouse looks at me with this expression that says, "I have been living with this for years." 9 times out of 10, the spouse is right. Hearing loss is one of the only medical conditions where the person who has it is often the last one to know. And I don't say that to be condescending. There's actually a neurological reason for that, but it means that people around you have been watching quietly and compensating and losing connection with you while you genuinely believe that everything was fine. I'm Dr. Lane Garrett, founder of Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus here in Utah, and I've been treating hearing loss for over 20 years. Today I want to give you the real picture, what your family has actually been noticing, and why you've missed it, and then what happens to both of you when hearing loss finally gets treated properly. Our industry talks a lot about the person with hearing loss, the audiogram, the hearing aids, the amplification needed. What we talk about far less is what's happening to everyone else around them, because hearing loss doesn't just affect one person in a household, it changes how everyone in that household communicates. It's been called a third-party disability. The spouse who starts facing you to speak, the adult child who stops calling because phone conversations are exhausting, and the grandkids who just stop talking to grandpa during noisy family dinners. And here's the part that most people don't realize. By the time you think there might be a problem, the people around you have already been adjusting to it for years. The research on how long people wait before seeking help, on average, it's 7 to 10 years after first noticing a problem. 7 to 10 years. During that stretch, the family has been adapting around a problem the person with the hearing loss hasn't accepted yet. I want you to understand what that looks like from the other side. Maybe you're thinking, my hearing's fine. I'd know if it wasn't, but would you? Or have you just gotten really good at filling in the gaps? Think about it. Everyone in your house knows how to get your attention before they start talking. Your family has to face you when they speak, not because it's polite, because they figured out you need to see their face. The TV volume that everyone else finds uncomfortable feels normal to you. And your spouse stopped trying to talk to you from another room, not because they gave up, because they learned it just didn't work. You think people mumble more than they used to. You think restaurants have gotten louder. You think your phone connection is always bad. But what if it's not the world getting noisier? What if that's your auditory system quietly narrowing so gradually that you never felt the line get crossed? And here's the part that's hardest to hear. The people who love you noticed it long before you did. They've been fighting this for years. They've been losing you gradually, quietly from conversations, from connections, from the dinner table. That's not dramatic. That's just what the research says. If someone just came to your mind while you were watching this, a spouse, a parent, someone you've been trying to get through to, that's exactly the kind of content I make on this channel. Subscribe and I'll keep giving you the straight story, twice a week, no sales pitches. So why does this happen? Why is the person with hearing loss so often the last to know? There's actually a clinical term for it, anosognosia. It's a reduced awareness of one's own condition, and in hearing loss, it's structural, not stubbornness. Age-related hearing loss almost always starts in those high pitches, the sounds that carry consonant clarity like the S, the F, the TH sounds that make speech crisp. They're the ones that go first. But low-frequency sounds hold on, so you still hear the volume of speech. Voices don't disappear, they get muddled. And your brain, which is extraordinarily good at prediction, starts filling in what it can't quite catch. You stop noticing the gaps because your brain is quietly stitching the whole picture together. What this means clinically is that asking someone, do you have a hearing loss, is not a good screening tool. Many people with clinically significant hearing loss will tell you they hear just fine. They're not lying, their brain has genuinely adapted to a new normal. The people around them, though, they don't have that adaptive filter. They hear every missed word, every wrong answer, and every moment where the person with hearing loss responded to something entirely different than what was said. They watch, they compensate, and then they start to grieve quietly, a connection with their loved one that's slowly going away. So what does this look like? After 20 years of conversations on both sides of this, here's what family members consistently tell me. First, the TV. This is almost always the first thing. The volume goes up, then it goes up again. The rest of the family starts leaving the room. Nobody says anything because nobody wants to start that conversation. Second, social withdrawal. The person with hearing loss starts skipping noisy environments, and then family gatherings start to feel overwhelming. Restaurants, going out to eat, that's almost impossible. They'll often frame it as, I just don't feel like going. But the spouse knows the real reason. It's exhausting to pretend to follow conversations you can only partially hear. Third, wrong answer responses. This is a subtle one that families notice before patients do. You ask a question, the person answers something adjacent. Not what was asked, but in the same conversational neighborhood. They caught some of it, their brain predicted the rest, and they answered confidently, but wrong. Fourth, the emotional distance. This is the one that hurts families the most. When someone can't consistently follow a conversation, they start participating less. They get quieter. They stop initiating conversations. Spouses describe feeling like they're losing the companionship with the person they love. Some describe it as loneliness while living in the same house. Research on couples affected by hearing loss found that the sense of loneliness was expressed more frequently among the hearing partners than the individuals with the hearing loss themselves. The person with the hearing loss had adapted to their new normal. Their partner was living with the full weight of what had been lost. Now here's the part that surprises most of my patients. When we fit someone with hearing aids and it goes well, family members often notice the change much more dramatically than the person wearing the hearing aids. A national study in the United States found that family members of hearing aid users were more likely to report improvements in family relationships and emotional connection than the users of the hearing aids themselves. Why does that happen? Because the person with hearing loss adapted gradually. Their baseline for fine shifted over years. When hearing improves, they notice it, but the improvement feels incremental to them. The family, they get the person back. Someone who responds at dinner without needing to be facing them. Someone who laughs at the right moment. Someone who's present again in a way they haven't felt in years. Let me tell you about my own experience. I have a mild hearing loss, and when I started wearing hearing aids a few years ago, I honestly didn't notice that much of a difference. We were chatting with family a couple of weeks later, and someone asked Lane, what do you think? And I said, I don't know. I don't really notice that much difference. My wife immediately turned to look at me and said, are you freaking kidding me? And then she started listing off all the ways her life had gotten better. Then my kids chimed in and started telling me how much more I was participating. I proved that the research was correct. So what's the takeaway here? If you're the person being dragged in by a spouse, take that seriously. The people around you aren't overreacting. They've been watching your hearing problem longer than you realize, and their perspective is often more accurate than your own. Not because they're smarter, but because they don't have the adaptive filter your brain has tried to build. And if you're the family member that's doing the dragging of your loved one into the appointment, please come to the appointment if you can. I always ask the spouse directly what they're noticing, not as a formality, but because that perspective often tells me more about the real world impact than the hearing test does. The hearing test tells me the degree of hearing loss. The spouse tells me what's actually being cost. And when the spouse isn't there, I ask the patient, what would your spouse tell me right now if they were sitting next to you? That question changes things. People admit things about their own hearing from their spouse's perspective that they won't say about themselves. She'd probably say, I miss a lot, or he'd say that the TV is too loud. It's a different access point to the same truth. People wait an average of 7 to 10 years to seek treatment after they first have a hearing problem. During that time, the hearing loss is progressing. The brain is being deprived of auditory input, and the relationships around you are quietly absorbing the cost. Here's the bottom line. Hearing loss isn't just your problem. It's everyone's problem, quietly, for longer than you probably know. The people who you love have been adapting, compensating, and missing you for years while you genuinely believe everything was fine. When treatment is done right, the change is real, and often the person who notices it most isn't the one wearing the hearing aids. If you've been the person saying, I don't really think I need to be here, consider that the people who sent you in might be seeing something that you can't. And that acting on that sooner rather than later is one of the best things you can do, not just for your hearing, but for the relationships that matter most to you. Now, I want to hear from you. Were you the person who got dragged into the audiologist, or were you the one doing the dragging? Drop a comment below. Your experience helps other people feel less alone in this. And if you want to understand more about what a proper hearing evaluation should actually include, not just what most clinics offer, I've put together a free learning center with honest breakdowns of what matters and what doesn't. The link is in the description. And if you're here in northern Utah and want an evaluation that looks at the full picture, including how you're actually functioning in real-world noise, you can schedule an appointment in one of our clinics. You can find that link in the description too. Thanks for watching.